Okay, good morning again. Welcome back to day 2 of the Korea Cold War annual meeting. It's great to see everyone. I hope that you enjoyed your evening last night, and those that you attended the social, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed that. The music was wonderful. We have a couple administrative remarks for you, or comments for you. Just a reminder, if you could please silence your phones, that would be appreciated. We also would very much appreciate your candid feedback on the surveys, and you can either fill them out in person in the copies that are in your folder, or if you would prefer to use a QR code, that would be great also. Just one quick announcement. Is Jeff Barker in the room, or Baker in the room? No. Okay. All right. We are pleased to announce this year, so you can plan for next year, that our Korea Cold War annual meeting for 2026 is going to be held in Omaha, Nebraska. That's going to give everyone an opportunity to see our laboratory there, and there is also a phenomenal Stratcom museum that we will be making arrangements for a tour for that also. And they have an excellent Cold War exhibit, and also if you're a plane enthusiast, I think you'll enjoy that a lot. And the dates are 6 and 7 August. So before we start the program, I would like to call up the service casualty offices and AFMEs, if y'all could please come forward. It's more fun when you spring it on them.
So, distinguished family members, good morning to all of you. Contrary to popular belief, this is not a DPAA event. This is a Department of Defense event. We use the term accounting community, and that's what it is. It's an accounting community that not just brings you together, organizing, planning, executing events like this, but it's an accounting community that works year-around. Now, for many of you, the 4 of them to my left, outside of Tim, you deal with directly. They're your direct liaison to us, to AFMES, AFDIL. We could not do what we do in DPAA without our partners. We could not do this important work to serve you and your loved ones without our partners. Invaluable contributions from each and every one of them. So I wanted to take a little bit of time, publicly recognize each of them, and to present to them one of the posters from, as you all know, this AGB. And I hope I speak for you that on behalf of these Gold Star family members and DPAA, our thanks and appreciation to each of you, Tim, Greg, Richard, Donovan, and Sandra. Thank you very much. If I could, please. Greg, thank you very much. Richard, thanks very much. And you know that behind every successful leader that you see up here, Sandra, behind every successful leader are incredibly talented, dedicated, devoted professionals that work for each of these folks. And you know them because you deal with them. We're just so very grateful to all of them and being part of this accounting community. Thank you all.
Okay, to start our morning, we have Lieutenant General Derek McCauley. He is the Deputy Commander of the United Nations Command. General McCauley was commissioned into the Canadian Armed Forces in 1989. He served in multiple assignments alongside allies and partners for most of his career. A full bio can be found in your program booklet, so I won't go into a lot of details. General McCauley is going to be speaking from South Korea via Zoom and will share some insights on the geopolitical situation on the peninsula. General McCauley?
Even in the most difficult political climates, bringing home the remains of over 455 service members from the north of the demilitarized zone. And that work has never stopped. More recently, on the southern side of the DMZ, at a place called Arrowhead Hill, a former battlefield once choked with fire and fury, more than 300 sets of remains have been recovered, carefully, respectfully, and gratefully repatriated to their nations. These are not just numbers. These are sons, brothers, fathers. These are your loved ones. These are our heroes. Despite the complexity of the diplomacy and the shifting tensions on the peninsula, the United Nations Command, with the partnership of the Republic of Korea, continues its mission side by side of the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency and the Korean Ministry of National Defense Agency for KIA Recovery and Identification, MACRI. It is painstaking work, Detailed, emotional, sometimes frustrating. But it's our solemn duty, because our work is not finished. More than 8,000 personnel from 22 United Nations Command member states remain missing from the Korean War, and that number is staggering to me. But even more staggering is this. Each of those names represents a family still waiting, parents who grew old with questions, spouses who held on to hope, children who grew up without a father. The generations born since, carrying a legacy they've never fully understood, but never stopped honoring. As Joseph Campbell once said, a hero is someone who has given his or her life to something bigger than oneself. The men and women we seek to bring home fought for something greater than themselves. They fought for love. They fought for country. They fought for family and the love of peace. To the families here today, I want you to know you've not been forgotten. Your sacrifices, your patience, your pain, these are felt deeply among all of us in uniform, no matter the nation. We see you, we stand with you, and we promise you we will never stop. The United Nations Command will continue to pursue every effort, exhaust every lead, and engage every partner to bring them home. We will keep digging, keep questioning, keep believing until we have fulfilled that promise, until they all come home. Let us ensure no soldier is forgotten, no soldier walks alone, and no soldier goes unloved. Let us carry forward their memory with the dignity and determination it deserves. And let us always remember the selfless dedication and unwavering courage of those who gave their today for our tomorrow. On behalf of my wife, Rhonda, and myself, thank you. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for this opportunity. And may God bless you all. Certainly willing to take any questions.
So just like yesterday, if you have a question, if you would please raise your hand. We have folks in the audience that will come around with a microphone. If there's any questions for General McCauley?
Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, this is the #2 senior leader in United Nations Command, who, by the way, under the terms of the armistice, is the one to work with all remains that either move from south to north or north to south. He's obviously stayed up very late. It is Saturday evening in North Korea, so a chance to ask questions.
Yes, sir.
Am I here? Thank you,
Yes.
General. My question is that while we are primarily here as Americans for our loved ones that were lost, it was a UN mission, and so what work is being done to contact or reach our allies that also were missing in action or lost over that time?
Well, thanks so much for your question. It's a great and actually timely question. Since I've had the privilege of being in command, our allies from the United Nations member states have increased their efforts, and I would offer that is because of the great work DPAA does, and the fact that they are so open and welcoming to our allies to share best practices, but also to share some of the knowledge that exists. I would say countries like Australia are certainly having a lot of success. Countries like Canada try to learn best practices. And of course, our Korean partners, Macquarie, do some incredible work with our partners and allies. And in fact, sometimes they do the work for our allies. I think the best example is in a few days, actually on the 14th of this month, we will have 3 sets of Turkish remains moved from Hawaii back to the peninsula. We will do a dignified transfer to Macquarie here on the peninsula, where Macquarie will help the Turkish authorities identify the remains of their 3 soldiers from the Korean War that happened to be in the DPAA's facility in Honolulu. So a lot of work being done, and I would say it really is all because of the men and women that work in DPAA, and I've had the privilege to see their work firsthand here in Korea, but also to visit them in Honolulu. So a lot of work yet to be done, and most of our allies do not have the resources that DPAA or Macquarie have, but certainly the openness of both of those organizations make it possible for them to provide, if you will, knowledge and resources, but also interest.
Thank you. We have a question over here.
My question is, do any of the other UNC partner ally nations have a more productive relationship with North Korea right now than we do for inroads in those ways?
Yeah, unfortunately, the short answer is no. We continue to look for additional opportunities. I think the one thing that I guess I will maybe provide from a political situation is certainly since about December of 2024, and actually a little bit before, in the relationship and the budding relationship between North Korea and Russia, and how that has certainly impacted the Ukrainian war, has really taken our ability to speak with North Korea into a place where it is unfortunately not very productive. As you're probably aware, we do speak to North Korea on a daily basis using United Nations Command, the pink phone, if you will, in the Joint Security Area for military purposes, whether that's to de-escalate tensions or to try to contact them with respect to people that desert or flee North Korea and decide that they want to go back. Or in fact, just recently, there was a gentleman that was in his 90s, was detained after the Korean War, and wanted to be buried back in North Korea. So we try to connect with North Korea, but it's not consistent, and it's very difficult to get discussions to find and go to the areas where we believe our missing soldiers are. There is some hope I would offer, as some of our other nations that may not be specific member states, although there may be a few, continue to try to reopen embassies in North Korea. That may provide us some opportunity in the future, but I would say in the near future we continue to be hopeful that an avenue will exist, and of course you're probably very aware that the new administration here in South Korea is very interested in unification and opening up dialogue with North Korea, much more so than the last administration, which was President Yoon, who was recently impeached.
So on that pink phone dialogue, are they responding, or that's what you're saying is sketchy? Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
So they do respond. We check it twice a day, just in case. So back and forth, they have sent us messages with respect to activity that they may be doing on their side of the MDL, just to ensure that we're not escalating, or we're not unnecessarily seeing tensions rise from South Korea. But as far as connections, when we try to discuss anything other than operations, that's where I would offer it's a bit sketchy. We don't get a lot of response to those requests. And the most recent one would be, was a request to transfer remains back to the north, which unfortunately was not met with any success.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Can we get a microphone here in the front, please?
Good morning. I'm the sister of this brother of mine who, for many years, I've been coming to these meetings. In the beginning, my question would be that in Hawaii, in the burial grounds there, they would not permit some of those to be disinterred. And the thing is, he was in one of the beginning of those activities, fights, whatever you want to call them, that took his life. And he was always a giver, never a taker. He would give anything for his country and his love of his family. So I just wondered why. Now, finally gave permission to disinter, and I don't hear much about what they're doing, or have they taken much concern about disinterring and studying for the remains.
Derek, let me field that one. Ma'am, all 864 unknowns from the Korean War will eventually be disinterred. We are 85% complete. We will be done in 2027. The only ones remaining are 3 unknowns at the National Cemetery in Honolulu and the one here at Arlington. After we finish, we intend to ask for those 4. Donna Knox, where is she? Knows that. So all of them, unknowns from the Korean War brought back by Operation Glory, will be out and under forensic analysis.
I don't have a lot of time.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we were always so close, and the meeting was long before they didn't even want to allow them to listen to their control. But finally, when they did, then it just seemed like forever. So there would be, I think, in the case of his battleground history, that he would have been in one of the earlier ones. So that's why I'm so concerned. And on another note, I want to tell you how much I believe in you, and thank you, sir, because you have compassion. And that's one of the big things that we need in this concern, is compassion and caring. That's all we want, and that's all we can receive. Thank you very much for your problems to find a way to the stubborn Korean, North Korean people.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. We have a question here in the back, please? We'll get this one, ma'am, and then we'll get you.
I would like to know if there is any kind of like financial stuff going on, like with Kim Jong-un and with other allies or anything like that. Are they requesting financial aid like Kim Jong-un is and stuff?
So, ma'am, on finance, I'm not aware of any financial requests from North Korea specific to the mission here, nor am I familiar with any requests actually from any of our member states for specific requests for financial assistance. Many of the member states, when it comes to returning their soldiers home, the financial part they find, and they have operations to ensure that operations can be funded if operations can be conducted. And I think that's the issue that we see now is more of the fact that we know or we believe we know where some of the remains of the fallen are, and we just can't get to them based on discussions with North Korea. But I'm not aware of any other funding from that perspective. The funding that Kim Jong-un gets is illegal in nature and comes through a lot of cryptocurrency and cyber action.
Thank you. Ma'am in the back there under the lights.
Yes, I have a question. Given that the administration has changed and is now more favorable, at least appears to be more favorable, South Korea with relations with North Korea, do you believe that that would lead to, I know that we are legally allowed to go to North Korea, but do you believe that would lead to a softening that would allow us to travel as individuals to North Korea?
It's a great question, ma'am. I'm not sure where that will take us in the near future. I think certainly, as you identified, historically the administration here in the Republic of South Korea is the Democratic Party, the DP, which tends to have or has had a more open communications with North Korea when they've been in power. I guess the only thing I would offer is a perspective of context. I think the difference between previous administrations and this administration is the context that we find ourselves in from a global security situation, and the fact that North Korea has and continues to work with Russia for Ukraine and show that they are not that interested, to be quite frank, in talking with South Korea at this time. So I guess, time will tell. The administration here, President Lee, is only just into his second month of his 5-year administration. And so certainly a lot of work yet to be done and potential for things to open up. But I think it'd be far too early to look at moving into or traveling into North Korea at this time, and certainly that would be an individual and national choice. But we have seen, if you will, some movement from Russians moving in, of course, to and vacationing, etc., in North Korea, but nothing other than that. So I think we can remain positive from a perspective of that it could occur. I don't think we should look at it negatively, but I think there certainly is. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort on both sides to have an ability, I think, to go to North Korea, from my perspective.
Thank you, sir. We have time for one more question. Anybody else have another question for the general? Okay. Mr. McKeag, over to you.
Derek, great to see you. Thanks very much for, again, connecting with the families and, more importantly, sharing your incredible insights. I had the privilege of meeting General McCauley weeks after he took over as Deputy Commander of United Nations Command when he visited the Pentagon. Ma'am, you are absolutely right. Compassion is what struck me within minutes of us beginning our discussion. You heard it firsthand. Your interest, our shared objectives are well represented by General McCauley's leadership. One of the things that he initiated was reaching out to every single ambassador, defense attaché among the United Nations sending states, organizing a tour and a visit of MACRI to give them a first-hand look at how MACRI does business and why this mission is so vitally important. You heard General McCauley talk about the work that MACRI did at Arrowhead Hill as part of the Comprehensive Military Agreement. Among the South Korean, North Korean, and Chinese remains that they found while they worked at Arrowhead was one French soldier. As MACRI moved down toward Hill 111, which is of great interest to us simply because there are 9 Marines that we believe were lost there, we're hopeful that there might be, through the work of the South Korean government, through the work of the United Nations Command, that those DMZ operations will resume as it had with great success. Derek, thanks very much again. God bless you, God bless your team, and we look forward to continuing to work with United Nations Command and the great work that you do. God bless you.
As many of you know, the Korean War Memorial Wall of Remembrance was dedicated in 2022 and contains the names of over 36,000 Americans and 7,100 Koreans who died supporting the Korean War. Today we have the Vice Chairman of the Korean War Veterans Memorial Foundation, retired U.S. Army Colonel Richard Dean, to share some information about the memorial. Richard?
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity, welcoming to the Gold Star families. My name's Richard Dean. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Korean War Veterans Memorial, and I've been affiliated with the memorial since 1992. And you say, wow, back to 1992. That was the start of the second phase of the memorial's construction. And my responsibility was with the Army Corps of Engineers, Baltimore District, and I was the project engineer / construction engineer overseeing 6 different contracts trying to build one memorial. So I had the architect, the muralist, the sculpturist, the fabricator for the stone, fabricator for the statues, and the general contractor, trying to herd cats. And it took us 3 years to get what was dedicated in 1995. After the memorial was dedicated, one of the presidential advisors, Colonel Bill Weber, established a foundation to help the Park Service maintain the memorial. And so he started a foundation, which is the same foundation I'm affiliated with now. And they comprised of members of the board, Presidential Advisory Board, and members that helped construct the memorial. And we started back in the late 1990s and have been going on since then. One of our board meetings in 2009, we came up with the idea of building a wall of remembrance. And our theme is that the memorial honors those that served, but it failed to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice. There used to be a little kiosk that you could print out something about your family member, but it really failed to honor those that served. So we came up with the architect, Bill Leckie, and myself, we came up with a concept, and we grew it from there. And so the first step is that we hired a lobbyist for $1, and he helped write up a resolution and reached out to the 4 members of Congress that were members of the Korean War. So Sam Johnson led the effort for the first 2 legislations back in 2011 and 2013, and then he retired. And then Congressman Sam Johnson took up the ownership, and we got the bill approved in 2016. It should be noted that he was a Vietnam veteran, POW, for 7.5 years. So he knew what we were going after. So once we got the law into action, then we had to go raise money and get it through the different concepts and get it designed. And how do you get a law through? This flag behind me, the POW-MIA flag, you go walk the halls of Congress and you go visit those offices first and get their sponsorship for that bill that you want. That was our biggest selling point. The second selling point is out of the staff members is, how much is this going to cost? And it was written in the law that no federal funds would be executed to build this wall of remembrance. So it was all privately done, and I'll note later in my about the donations from the South Korea government. So that's the process that it took. So it took 3 of us in our foundation walking the halls of Congress, and we would meet every other week, and we'd find one day and just start knocking on doors, visiting staff members. And it grew and grew. And then we also had a similar bill through the Senate. And finally, it got through at the end of a congressional session. We were praying like hell that we could get it done without having to start that effort all over again. But we eventually ended up with 313 sponsors from the congressmen from around the U.S. And so that's where it came. So the history of the Wall of Remembrance, once we got the law passed, one of the biggest criteria is that we didn't know the list of names. And the list of names had to come from the Department of Defense Personnel and Readiness area. It didn't come from DPAA. It came from the casualty offices to the Personnel and Readiness. But Personnel and Readiness were the ones that established the criteria to get your loved ones on the wall. So they looked at a time period and the area and within those borders. And if your loss is outside that, then your name was not included in the wall. So if you want to there's some family members here that don't have their family member's name on the wall. That's what you've got to do, is get the policy changed. And you either have to petition Department of Defense to change it with a justification, or reach out to your congressman and try to get that policy changed. Our foundation can't get the policy changed, neither can DPAA. Let's go to the next slide. So I mentioned Colonel Bill Weber. This is his statue and his face listed on the memorial. He had a tremendous heart for the Korean culture, the Korean people, and he lost his leg and arm in battle in Korea. Not at the same time, on 2 separate occasions, 2 separate days. He lost his leg one day, and then the next morning he lost his arm during another rocket attack. So he's a Silver Star recipient, a tremendous guy, and my adopted grandfather. Next slide. This is kind of a layout of the memorial. And I kind of want to just trivia fact. There's a lot of symbolism of 38 at this memorial. Most people don't realize. There's 19 statues, but if you look at the mural wall, the reflections show 38 statues, 38th parallel. There are 38 months in the conflict. The angle at the flagpole is 37 degrees, 6 minutes, almost 38 degrees. And one last trivia, we signed a contract with the architect to build a wall. 38 months later, it was dedicated. So if you look at signing a contract to design, we got it approved through numerous commissions in a in a very tough area to get approval on designs. And then we had to raise the funds, and the memorial cost over $20 million. And we got it constructed and dedicated 38 months. That is unheard of in this area. Next. So this picture shows one of the stones. This is panel number 100, and it's the first stone that was laid. And it takes a crane, and what's interesting about this stone, it's curved on the face, the top face, it's curved on the bottom face, or the front face and the back side. And if you go run your fingers across all 100 panels, they're all within a 64th of an inch for quality control. So it was quite a challenge. But we got the names in November of 2021, and this picture is taken at the beginning of December. So within 30 days, we had the names laid out, at least for the last 15 panels, and had it inscribed, trucked from Minnesota down here, and we're starting to place it. That's how close we were, and the dedication's next July. So we had quite a challenge with getting the names. After the law was enacted in 2016, it took 61 months for us just to get get the names of the Marines, the Navy, and the Air Force. And we had to start. So we started actually going backwards, placing the stones instead of starting with panel number 100. The Army was still going through their selection process or screening process. So we didn't get the names for the Army till February, and by April 9th, we had placed the last stone. So we had a lot of planning and a lot of work to do. Let's go to the next picture. So this is a picture represents the last stone, panel number 26. It was done on a Saturday, and you can kind of see the mess on the ground site, but how many people does it take to lay one of these stones? It took 4, one on each corner, and then a crane operator. And you can see it's a 350-ton crane if you know anything about cranes. Well, what's important about this day is the night before I got a call from the former defense attaché from Korea, General Pio. He said, "Sir, can you take me up to Colonel Weber's house? I want to see him." I said, "Sir, he's not doing very good. He's not well. I saw him about 3 weeks before." I said, "And I got to work the next day." And so I said, "Maybe call me Saturday." So I get a call Saturday, just before this stone's being placed. "Hey, I need you to take me up to Colonel Weber's house." And he lives an hour and a half from here. I said, "I'll come pick you up in 2 hours after I get this stone placed." So we drove up to his house and saw him, and I had this picture, and I showed it to him, and I told Colonel Weber, "Hey, the last stone's placed at the memorial." And we spent an hour up there. An hour later, I got a phone call 4 hours later, he had passed away. So it touches my heart. So that's the last stone, and I promised him that I would help him get this wall of remembrance built, and I kept my promise to him. Next. So if you go to the memorial, this is the wall of remembrance at night, just before we're ready to dedicate it. This memorial looks different at nighttime, daytime, cloudy, sunny, rainy, snowy. Next. So this is my typical work day that was in January of 2022. We got a snowfall. I had to shovel half the snow off just to get to the construction site. But I spent quite a few years down here in all different types of terrains to do that. Layout of the names. So after we got the bill approved, we had lots of discussions. Do we list it by date of death like Vietnam is? Do we do it alphabetically? There's 36 pairs of names that have the same first name, middle initial, last name. So just to be, going through that, and we said, well, we got to figure out a way to, how do we avoid that? And so we actually came up with sorting them by the branch. So the first branch that was established in the military was the Army. The next one's the Navy, next one's the Marines, the last one's the Air Force. So that's how it's all laid out. The next way is by their rank. And the reason why we started with privates is because they bore the brunt of the war. The first 53 panels are Army privates and private first classes. So that's 53% of the KIAs during the Korean War were men that were 17, 18, 19 years of age, most of them. Just think if they had lived a full life like we are now, what they could have contributed to the world. That's the causes of war. And then we sorted it by their last name. Now, in the Army section, in the privates, in the private first classes and sergeants, there's roughly 7,100 Korean names. And you wonder why there are so many Korean names. They're KATUSAs, Korean augmentation to the U.S. Army. They served in American units, wore American uniforms, did the mission of the Americans, but were killed in lieu of Americans. So they filled the undermanned units with doing it, and that's why their names are included in that wall. This wall and the names are the first memorial on that mall that have foreign names on there. And one thing that you can always state when these Korean dignitaries come into town, they usually land at Dulles. The plane lands about 10 o'clock. At 11:30, there's a wreath ceremony at the memorial with a Korean dignitary, whether it's a minister or the president, to pay their respects to our loved ones. So just to let you all know that. So the challenges that our foundation has now, the maintenance of the memorial. If you go out there today, you'll see that the junipers aren't doing well. The Park Service's contract with the sprinkler person, irrigation contractor, hasn't been let yet. So those junipers aren't getting watered and they're dying. Those are the challenges our foundation tries to help the Park Service with. We just finished the 3-year service agreement, so the memorial's totally under the auspices of the National Park Service to maintain. We're out there to try to maintain it. We're coming up with a maintenance plan and budgeting costs, so the Park Service can say, hey, in 3 years it's going to cost X amount of dollars, and they can start programming and be better programmers of their funding. I think that's about all I have, and I know I've got a bunch of questions at the end of the ceremony, but that's just a highlight of the memorial. Thank you.
I would be remiss if I didn't share with you, many of you know this already, that this is a Gold Star grandson. In fact, Rick's grandfather, an airman, was one of the first to go missing and be unaccounted for from the Korean War. So Rick, thank you not only for your leadership, but more importantly, your dogged determination to honor your grandfather and his comrades. Our thanks.
So I do want to add a little bit more onto that. When I worked for the Army Corps of Engineers, my bosses had no idea of my family's connection to the Korean War. And I was really naive about the Korean War. My grandmother didn't talk at all about my grandfather. And once I got onto this memorial and building it, I started digging in and learned quite a lot. Learned that my father, Navy, so I was going to ask Sergeant Major, pipe up. Army! That's right. I'm Army, my dad's Navy, and he served 2.5 years in the Korean War in the waters of the Korean Peninsula. My uncle on my mother's side, Colonel John R. Lovell II, served right at the end of the Korean War, and his father, my grandfather, is still missing in action. So, my uncle had to go serve in Korea, knowing his father was somewhere in the peninsula. And I try to keep that personal and not with the memorial, but it does come up. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. As many of you know, the Korean War tore families apart and left thousands of orphans. Our next speaker's father was one of those orphans. Mr. Arnold Chung will talk today about his family's experience, about how the family came to America, and how the war changed their lives. He's a second-generation Korean American born in Boston, Massachusetts, and raised in Los Angeles. Mr. Chun is an accomplished actor and director and strong advocate for veterans who served during the Korean War. Mr. Chun?
Good morning, everyone. I can't tell you what an honor and a privilege and how humbled I am to be here to talk about the story of my family and to share with you what I've learned over the last 14 years when I first heard this story. But as a preface, everything I'm going to tell you here you've probably heard in terms of the statistics, the facts, and the information about the Korean War over the last 2 days. I've tried to research and find as much information as I could that was accurate enough, but it's always going to be open for debate. So I'll do my best to give you information from what I've learned, but if you have other opinions, I welcome that. And so I want to begin by saying I'm a father of 3. I have a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old. I received a BA in history from the University of California, Irvine, in East Asian and European history. And how I got into filmmaking was literally by the grace of God. And I say that because I had no intention of being an actor or director. I wanted to be a normal American kid like anyone else, playing baseball, basketball, going to the video arcade games with my friends, chasing after pretty girls, hopefully taking a pretty girl to prom. That didn't work out so well, but a friend of mine actually asked me to volunteer on a film set. I was actually in the mechanical engineering consulting world. This was in 2003. And leaving that job, I had an opportunity to go into pharmaceutical sales. And a friend of mine, who was working for a council member in the city of Los Angeles, called me up and said, hey, I know you've got like a week off before starting your new job. Would you mind being able to volunteer on my friend's independent film set? And I said, independent film set? What's that? Trust me, growing up in Los Angeles, you can grow up and not be in the film entertainment industry. So I was 27 and I took an opportunity because I'd never been on a film set before. And that turned into 21 years later. And through that journey, I found a deeper calling that I never understood. And it is tied to the story of my family. 75 years ago, June 25th, 1950, the North Korean Communist Army invaded South Korea. By September of 1950, as you know, they almost claimed victory. Thankfully, General MacArthur, he was authorized to conduct the Incheon landing, pushing back the North Korean offensive and pushing the Communist Army all the way back to the North Korean border of the Yalu River near China. Be home by Christmas. That was the slogan among many soldiers in top brass. They didn't expect the Chinese to intervene and retaliate. But they didn't understand the psychology of communism. See, the Chinese, they couldn't afford to have democracy so close to their border and their newly formed government in October of 1949. So they decided to help out. With 250,000 soldiers, they stormed across the border and pushed the ROK, US, and UN forces down south to regroup and retreat. And after 3 behemoth years of fighting and defense, a ceasefire agreement was signed on July 27, 1953. Over 3 million civilians lost their lives. Over 45,000 troops were killed from the 22 nations that were called upon by the UN to defend South Korea. Over 36,000 of them were Americans. For North Korea, it was estimated over 400,000 to 500,000 soldiers were killed, and the Chinese communists lost between 180,000 to 400,000 troops. It's also argued by them, and this is not often talked about, but they kidnapped over 80,000 South Koreans prior to and after the war for various purposes. Children, teens, young men and women, people of significant skill who could be soldiers. My uncle was one of them, and we'll come back to that. Over 100,000 children were orphaned from the start of the war. My father was one of them, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Until I was 30 years old, I never knew the story of my father and my uncle. And where did the curiosity come from? Well, as a child, 14, 11, I can't remember exactly, probably more like 11, I would hear bits and pieces of my father talking about what he had experienced during the Korean War. But I never thought it was true. Because as an 11-year-old child, I didn't have the maturity to even understand if it was true. I just thought he was guilt-tripping me. I remember two famous instances. My father loved going to Burger King. He came to this country in 1972. And Burger King was one of his favorite places to go because cheeseburgers and hamburgers were a foreign thing in Korea. And I remembered I hated tomatoes. I don't know how many of you love tomatoes. I love tomatoes now, but I hated tomatoes as a kid. So when he would order the Whopper for me, I would take the tomato out of the burger, put it in a napkin, and try to hide it and throw it away. His eyes were so sharp. He would say, "Arnold, don't throw away that food. You better eat everything on your plate." I had no food when I was growing up as a kid. I thought, are you serious? What are you talking about? Like, no food as a kid. Like, my dad was a successful small business owner, and he had a Mercedes-Benz and a nice home. And I thought, we have all this luxury. What are you talking about? You were poor as a kid. The second instant, 1986, the Air Jordan 4s came out. Those shoes were $120. I wanted those shoes so bad. I said, Dad, please. So many of my friends have this shoe. I got to have this shoe. Please buy it for me, please. You know what my father said? Don't complain about your shoes. I got my first pair of shoes when I was 16 years old. And I thought, what are you talking about? 16 years old? It was so foreign to me. And I didn't believe it. I thought he was just guilt-tripping me, making me try to, have a sense of discipline and respect and just be thankful. Lo and behold, he was telling me the truth. 14 years ago, I sat my father and my uncle down to hear about the story because it just kept giving me so much curiosity. Like, what is he talking about? What happened? And one night I gave them some soju and snacks. Every Korean boy does this when they want to get something from their parents. You get them drunk. But in this case, I wanted to hear a great testimony. A testimony that increased my faith in God and deepened my respect for my father in a way that I hadn't known. You see, Korea was so poor after World War II from the Japanese occupation. Starvation was so rampant. My uncle was 16 years old before the war started, and he saw a line of kids lined up at some kind of school compound, and they were getting food. So my uncle ran over there, about 40 kids or something like that. He got a bite to eat, and then he remembered that the people that were running that compound, they told all the kids, hey, are you guys still hungry? Come over here. We've got bags of rice. Take them home to your families. It was a trap. They kidnapped him at gunpoint and took all those other 40 kids away on a truck into North Korea. This was a very common thing that happened. These communists were dressed like civilians to lure young kids in. And they failed to mention to these kids that, we got guns and trucks in the back when you try to get the rice. We're going to take you away. And that's what happened to my uncle. They forced him to fight for the North Korean army as slave labor, burying dead bodies, fighting on the front lines. Those 80,000 kids that were abducted, he was one of those kids and part of that number. I tried to find as much accurate information about this as possible, and from what I've read, a lot of those army units that came through the border to attack South Korea, they were comprised of 14 to 20-year-old kids forced to fight. So for 3 years, my uncle endured the slave labor and fighting for the North Korean army. And now let's talk about my father. My father was 5 years old when this happened. And so when my uncle disappeared, he remembered the truck even racing down the street. My father saw his brother being hauled away. And my dad told me that he remembered his uncle throwing the last of his belongings on the floor and yelling to him, go tell mom they've captured us. They're taking us to North Korea. My father's 5 years old. He doesn't even understand what's going on. He probably thought that they were going on a field trip. Lo and behold, no, they abducted him. So my father goes back to his home, tells his mother, my brother's gone. This is the bundle of clothes he gave me. I don't know what happened. And my grandmother told my father, his mother, told my father, stay here with your grandmother. I'm going to go find your brother and I'll come back. She never returned. I never got to ask her side of the story, so I'm not sure if she tried to, find them. But maybe they, crossed in passing and it was just kind of the wrong time. And 3 days later, the war broke out. My father remembered the side of the home after hearing explosions at 4 a.m. when the communist army invaded. The side of his home exploded open from an artillery round. And the home was unstable because of the fire and the structure being damaged by artillery. So he ran outside and he saw hundreds and hundreds of people fleeing for their lives. And that's how he ended up as an orphan on the streets of Korea. As you know, Korea was devastated, and the city of Seoul was pretty much left in ruins in 3 days. So my father joined 4 other kids that he found that were other orphans. You know, there were 100,000 orphans that were unfortunately a result of the Korean War. And they did everything they could to survive, sleeping in burnt out shelters, begging U.S. soldiers for rations, stealing food from vendors, eating through garbage, doing whatever they could to survive. He told me this one time, an amazing story, but it was funny. I'll share it with you. And if there's any children in the room, I know some of these images may be sensitive, so I want to be very tactful about that. But they didn't have anything to play with. And so my father said that he remembered the best place to get anything from U.S. soldiers was when they were on R&R and in a red light district. And look, at that time, there was a lot of things that happened, you know. So my dad and his friends, they hounded soldiers that would come out of this red light district time and time again, just asking them, Hershey's chocolate, $1 bill, whatever they could get. And this one soldier, they decided they're just going to encircle him. And just they're going to get something before, you know, he goes away. And he didn't have anything in his pocket, but he had this packet. And he threw the packet at them, happily, saying, I'm sorry, kids, this is all I got. The kids ran to the floor, just trying to get it with the grubby hands, and they got it, and they went back to their hideout, and they're all staring at it, looking at it. What is this thing? They have no idea what it is. So they're guessing, like, let's just open it up. So they open it up. It was a condom. But they don't know that. Condoms, that technology, it didn't exist in Korea. So they're guessing, like, oh, it's a balloon. Oh, no, maybe it's something to cover their big noses, whatever it is. So sure enough, what did they do? They blew it up. And they started playing tetherball with it. Because they had nothing to play with. They were so innocent, they just wanted something to play with and have fun and enjoy themselves. The neighboring rival orphan gangs heard the happiness and the laughing and the playfulness. What's going on over there? So when they saw my dad and his friends, they tried to beat them up and take away this condom balloon. My dad and his friends beat them up, and they went away with their, tails between their legs. But my dad told me he remembered them asking my dad and his friends, "Where did you get that? Tell us where you got it. We want to have one too. We don't have anything to play with." So my dad said, "Go ask the U.S. soldiers over there. We got it from them." So those kids ran over to the soldiers. My dad and his friends were like, "When those kids get more, we're going to go beat them up and steal theirs." So they go literally to the corner, watching the other kids see what's going on. And they saw the kids, again, hounding those soldiers. They didn't get anything. And then they remembered the lady that was running the facility came out with a trash can, threw out the garbage. And this is a true story. My dad saw the other kids go to the garbage, get a bunch of the used ones, blow them up, and start playing with them. True story. The next thing that happened, though, those kids came back and they teased my dad saying, "Look, we got 3 and you only got 1, too bad." Things happen in war, But you can't deny the innocence of children and what they wanted. They just wanted to do something to occupy their time and to feel a sense of worth and have happiness and comfort like any human being would want to have. Trust me, when I heard these stories, I was floored. I was blown away. I couldn't believe that they were true. So, in the spring of 1953, getting back to my uncle, where is he? He successfully escaped the North Korean Communist Army. Apparently, a fire broke out, and in that confusion and distraction, my uncle and 4 other kids that were also taken from South Korea, they were successfully able to escape that unit, headed up into the mountains, and they hid in caves. I think their plan was they were going to wait till the war was over and then find a way to cross the DMZ back down south and find their families. But you know what happened? A South Korean patrol that was coming through that area found them and brought them out and lined them up to be executed. They're wearing communist fatigues. They have no ID cards. There was no way for them to prove that they were from South Korea and that they were kidnapped. I think the grace of God literally saved my family, on top of the fact that their accent was different. The North Koreans in the northern province have what we call maybe New York accent versus LA in that sense. And so that South Korean commander, I believe, probably heard the accent and decided, you're not North Korean, but why are you wearing North Korean army fatigues? They killed any communist soldiers they found, in general. So my uncle and those boys were on their hands and knees, begging and pleading for their lives to be spared. This is actually something that was depicted in the epic Korean War film called Taegukgi, if you haven't seen it. It's amazing. There was a scene in there, when I saw that, I saw, oh my gosh, that's exactly what happened to my uncle. And as they were pleading for their lives, grace was given. The South Korean commander said, okay, you guys are really from South Korea? You're going to prove it to me. Where did you come from? Show us where you came from. You're going to join us. You're going to help us kill those North Korean communist soldiers. Then I'll believe that you're telling the truth. And that's what my uncle had to do to survive. And then when the armistice was signed, he was able to be brought back down south. And he's stationed at an army base near Busan, a joint U.S. ROK army base. He spent the next 10 months going back and forth from his base to Seoul to try to find my father. And it was a 6-hour truck drive. And lo and behold, he found my father at an orphanage in 1954. That's a picture of my father back then and my uncle, and a picture afterward, approximately, I think that's 1999. And every time I think about this story, it just humbles me, and it gives me so much gratitude of what my father's generation had to go through. And I'm sure many of you understand that and can feel that. What inspired me to tell this story? Well, I feel like as I learned more about this story, I truly understood what it meant to be a Korean American. I hold an unbelievable balance of both cultures and both worlds. And as I started to go through the journey of listening to veterans and in interacting with them and hearing their stories and getting to understand what they went through, I couldn't testify to anything other than this incredible sense of gratitude and humility and respect for what America has done for South Korea. A 75-year-old and continuing alliance between our two countries that represents freedom, liberty, hope, justice. It's something that I need to pass on. How are my children going to learn this? It changed my life forever. I never thought I would be up here talking to you and trying to do a story about this. But as I continued to learn more stories and hear more experiences and really meet more veterans, it compelled my heart to say, I have to do something to honor them and remember them, because how are my children going to learn this? Let's be honest. Let's look around this room. We are the current generation. How are we going to get 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 20-year-olds to continue on what we're doing here? It's going to be through education. It's going to be through filmmaking. It's going to be through storytelling. And if we can do something that is able to inspire them and capture their imagination and capture their inquiry and their curiosity to want to learn about their family legacy, then we've done something right to honor the people that came before us. I stand here only as a testament to God's grace, because when I think about all of the men and women that served and went to give their lives, the 17, 18, 19-year-old soldiers from 22 nations that went to fight for South Korea, I wouldn't be here without them. And it's just something that I think we have to continue to preach to the next generation. These soldiers, one of the things that my partner Holly and I, when we've been going around to talk about this story, the veterans often speak of the kids that they saw, the kids they saved, the kids they fed, the kids they adopted, the kids that they liberated. And it's interesting, they didn't talk too much about battles, they remember children. And it's just so compelling to me, and I'm trying to do something to preserve that legacy. And for the entire globe, because our brothers and sisters that are in all the other UN nations that served, their voices need to be heard. It's sometimes really just appalling to me that we haven't done a film like Saving Private Ryan about the Korean War. like a platoon about the Korean War. But I think the timing is now. And I think you can all participate in that. And that's what I'm trying to do. I just really thank you for this time and this opportunity to share this incredible story. I never saw my father cry until my uncle passed away at the funeral. And when I saw that, I couldn't understand anything other than the incredible bond that they must have had from the journey of going through and finding each other. And seeing that really touched my own heart and understanding, my God, my father and the things that he's gone through. I have a duty and a responsibility to share that story with the entire world and with all of you, not because it's my father, but because it represents what America did to the South Korean country. And so I really thank you so much for being here to listen to the story. And I'm going to play for you a small video that I made, which hopefully captures and pays tribute to what this project that I'm trying to do is about.
Do your parents remember about their childhood? Did they laugh? Did they smile at the sun? Were they able to run free? It's hard to believe they didn't have a home, a family. It's so hard to imagine any of them as orphans, abandoned because of the chaos and destruction that was happening around them. This is the story of my father, and your father, and maybe even mother. It's a story that has been forgotten. We need to remember that so we can pass it on to the next generation. Help us make a legacy to honor them, to love and appreciate before they're gone.
Thank you so much, everyone, and God bless you.
You see the reaction? Absolutely wow. Arno, thank you for sharing your incredibly powerful story that both relates the ravages, the sufferings wrought by war, but also the hope, and more importantly, the outcome when justice prevails, when right overcomes wrong. To say that yours is a providential miracle would be an understatement. Arnold, as you heard, is documenting his story in a film. Our hope is that he will finish the film just before the next KCW in 2026. And he is grateful, we're grateful for him screening that documentary, that film, at your next meeting. You know, you talk about Providence. The illustrious Dawn Berry happened to be at the Korean War Veterans Association meeting where she heard Arnold speak. Again, sharing this story with veterans, Korean War veterans, just as he has with you, to show the appreciation of him, his family, and more importantly, the grateful South Korean people. Arnold, on behalf of all the Gold Star families, thank you very much, and
Thank you.
we wish you the best on your project. Thank you.